Good on, friends. This is Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and my multiple sets of glasses today. This would be Ghosts of the Southern Anduin, and I think I've reviewed this once, probably twice now, so this might be the third time at it. I'm trying to keep things in step, but it was sitting on a shelf, out of sequence, and I can't remember if I did it recently or not. So we're going to do it again anyway. This is 4 low to mid-level adventures based on Lord of the Rings, and it is set in the eastern section of the Southern Anduin, not too far from Pellagar, and it is an area of Gondor and Middle Earth that actually is quite steeped in history of Gondor, but not represented that well in the MERP game system, right? So Bar-en-Tinnen is a sleepy little town that banks the mighty Anduin. Now the complacent inhabitants must keep their eyes open. A ghost haunts the river on foggy nights. The wise bar their doors at sundown. Can you unlock the mystery of the ghost on the river? This haunted riverfront is not the most terrifying recent events. A young lad, panic-stricken, dripping wet, shivering, collapses on the doorstep of the fen worms fire in, a broken arrow shaft protruding from his left arm. Will you help him defeat his enemies in The Survivor? The tailor's son disappears after encountering the river ghost and telling a story far and wide. Will you face the darkest evil to search for the young man in the Adane in Arthador? Despite plentiful rainfall, the trees and crops are withering. A supernatural blight has struck the land. Are you resourceful enough to combat the shadows on the bank? Confront bandits, undead, evil priests, and minions of Sauron as you hunt the ghosts of the Southern Anduin in these 4 exciting adventures. By Iron Crown. All right. This is I've played it once or twice, I think. It's actually a pretty decent adventure because it also bridges, like I said, a small niche area in the overall game world, and I like that sort of thing. There are, like I've said before, there are a couple of adventures modules that are just pure adventure, and they don't really add much other than the adventure itself. So to the area. So we got the Ghost on the River. Mighty Anduin is the longest river in the Middle Earth. It flows from the Grey Mountains in the northern wilds of Rohirrim through Rohan, past the great cities of Osgiliath, Minas Tirith, Pellagar, finally into the Bay of Bethalis. It holds many mysterious secrets and focuses the hopes, fears, and dreams of the people who live on its banks. The small town of Bar-en-Tinnen lies in Harithian, 60 miles downstream from the City of the Sun, i.e. Minas Tirith, and sometimes serves as a stop for traveling merchant vessels. The settlement sits on the junction of the rivers Tinnen and Anduin. Many of the stories of Anduin. Some of the key, when I talked about a minute earlier about how this is the path, the common pathway for Gondor to march to the south and southeast to confront things like the Harridan and the Southrons and other human-based realms to the far east, and it's also a path of invasion from those same very locations. In the Lord of the Rings, there's Aragorn's journey through southern Gondor and southern and southwestern Gondor with the Paths of the Dead and etc. etc. In part, it alleviates the pressures being put on southern Gondor from forces coming up from the coast and through this area, and in doing so, allows those soldiers to march to Minas Tirith to not necessarily assist at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, but in the events to take place afterwards. It gives the ability for the captains of the north or the captains of the west to leave Minas Tirith as equally or better guarded than it was prior to the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. And it also plays some important roles through the history, like I said. So the fact that there's settlements still on the East Bank. Time we get to the Lord of the Rings era, I'm pretty sure most of these settlements, including this town, would have been abandoned or destroyed just because there's just not enough forces to defend and make it viable for civilians to settle. So we got the NPCs, the floating haunt, It says, for as long as anyone can remember, Bar-en-Tinnen stood on the eastern banks of the Anduin, living in the shadow of some of the largest cities in Middle-earth. The small town has remained relatively unnoticed. People of Bar-en-Tinnen are, for the most part, honest folk. The town provides itself as a market for farmers and traders that live outside the area, as well as a stop for many travelers and merchants making the voyages up and down the Great River, etc., etc. So, town, layout of the town, renters, cottage, surrounding area. So we look at the task for the first adventure. The object is to unfold gradually as the player characters delve further into the story to discover the identity of the ghost on the river, and, if malevolent, dispose of it. Those who are willing to aid in settling the mystery of the river ghost should be prepared for the challenge that Ranur and possibly Erbeth presents. Starting the player's age, local knowledge, obstacles. Rainier is a fearsome opponent, though sometimes he becomes overconfident. The ferryman's skills and knowledge of the area contribute to his determination to win any conflict. Bale's open or he values his life above anything else, but he will not desert his post unless revealed to the open public or killed. So basically, he is working for Sauron's dark forces to ferry people across the Anduin. And he wears a dark cloak, and he prefers night and often cloudy and misty conditions, which leads to the envisionist of this quote ghost. And one of the people that's waiting to be transferred across is the young lady by the name of Abarthon. Abarthon. Yeah. All right. Says here, Game Master notes randoms are where the opponent ever carefully calculates his moves before performing them. The ferryman will, given time, set several traps before attacking player characters. He will normally spread them out roughly 20 feet apart in a dry riverbed area. He will then camouflage himself and hide in the natural area within the riverbed. Acting as a sniper, he will shoot at his foes and then carefully sneak to another position. This tactic may also have the PCs believing that there are more than one opponent. Urbathon, on the other hand, will attempt to flank the player characters after Ranner's attack. She will single out a player and ambush him or her. If outnumbered or put in a position that will directly threaten her life, she will flee on foot, leaving Ranner in the lurch, etc., etc. So, this is what you got to deal with. Now we go on to the second adventure, is the Survivor. The lower Anduin Valley is home to a great many people, as indicated by numerous villages, towns, and cities on its bank. Great River is the center of life in the southeastern Gondor, for it serves as a source of water, food, and travel, commerce. One of the greatest trade routes in all of Endor, the Anduin allows the easy passage of goods from cities to towns, etc., etc. It says here, on a foggy night, that night, Almus encountered an unusually heavy fog, so dense that even the brightest beacons were shrouded in the mist. Figuring he would become late and forego his bonus payment, Captain decided to press on, keeping nearly all of his crew on watch. A short time later, a crew member spotted a flickering light of a beacon directly ahead of the ship. The beacon indicated a warning that rocks and ultimately shore lay ahead. Warning the ship to change course to starboard, Perlin hoped to avoid the danger while still pressing southward. Fortunately, he should have kept the ship moving directly in the beacon, for later that night, the merchant vessel ran aground the eastern bank of the river, etc., etc. Distraught captain received his answer quickly. A small vessel crowned with a large cylindrical object came looming out of the fog. He squinted in the darkness, saw the ship, a great glass ball, a huge smoking wick in the center, a great lantern. Beside it stood a tall man dressed in black who merely smiled as he raised his crossbow. A shadowy figure took aim at the same moment at the group of armed men swarmed off the neighboring wood and scrambled down the embankment toward the crippled ship. Pavilion realized too late at the end of that the Amulus was at hand. Right? Okay. Right. The task. Task provides PCs with unusual circumstances. A sailor has wandered into town half drowned. The narrow in his left shoulder leaves evidence of bandits on the river. He babbles incoherently at his illness about his ship and his captain, which he never names. Late that evening, 3 travelers from the north arrive at Bar-en-Tinnen to stay at Finn warms fire. The young sailor begins to act even more strangely. The task is to first discover why the sailor's behavior changes around the 3 strangers or travelers, and second, to protect the young sailor from the bandits who intend on silencing him before he can identify any of them. So that's pretty straightforward. It's bandits, their hold, figure out where they are, take care of them. All right, it's all good. So That brings us to the third adventure. Guthian the priest. Guthian founded the Edain in Ardor, Arthador, Arthador, has been instrumental in keeping the cult secret and strong. The priest is truly an evil man, holds no reservations about limiting those who come too close to discovering the existence and purpose of his organization. He is behind Farrah Mill's disappearance and only waits the next gathering of the cult's membership to worship to dispose of the inquisitive bard. Garth is in his 50s, raised in Umbar, and is mixed of black Numerian blood, blah, blah, blah. So basically, where are we at? The task. Since Nadam's plea for help was ignored by the white speakers, he will look for help elsewhere to strangers. If this is a continuation of the first adventure, Nadam approaches the player characters to aid him. Baron Hill is taken by the Edena and Arthur as being held prisoner Amandor. Although none possess this knowledge, the task is first to find Farrah Hill and then rescue him from his captors. Additionally, player characters should discover Speaker Thardak to be a member of the Edain and Arthador, and then they seek to expose him to the rest of the speakers and have him expelled from the town. No, bad guy. Alright. Then we got Adventure 4, Shadows on the Banks. Tale of the Blacklisted Monk. At the beginning of time, the legacy of Black Enemy has cast a shadow all over all of Middle-earth. Sauron himself is the most prominent memory of Morgoth, but darkness extends far beyond his evil person. Even the most peaceful towns in Endor are not immune to creatures too horrible to inhabit nightmares. The ancient terrors lie beyond the most innocent covers, remaining dormant for sometimes thousands of years until accidentally unleashed on the unwary populace. Arvin the Traveler. This be the speller here. Few people in Miller have traveled more often and more widely than this Arvin. In his mid-60s, this man has journeyed to the far north as Arthedain, as far west as the islands off the coast of London, to the far east the hills of the Caracan Kin, and the far south is the Yellow Mountains beyond Far Herod. He's a collector of curios and brings back many trinkets, as he likes to call them. Right. Kelgor the Black-Fisted, born in Mook in the far east of Endor, is one of the Worma race, born in the name of Ukban, adopting name Arvin's Manor, Arvin's Home. The task. The police must discover the source and nature of the evil as descended on Bar-en-Tinnen and rid the town of it. This task is more than this dangerous, so the player characters must exercise extreme caution. Unless blessed with incredibly lucky rolls, no single player should be able to attack and defeat the Spectre in hand-to-hand combat. Alright. Despite the presence of the Spectre, the biggest obstacle in the player character's face is time. At the beginning of the adventure, Kelliger will be at the weakest stage of his powers and will gain sufficient strength to reach the next stage in 6 hours after the player characters are hired, since he has found a soul to feed on, which is Amber. Spirit gains increasing power as he feeds on the living. The player characters must race to destroy the amulet before Kelgor's abilities allow him to gain the possession of it. So we got counters, reactions to the town folk, wild to the wildlife. And here, dogs will growl and snarl for no apparent reason. The farmer's cattle low constantly. Most of the animals are frightened of the Spectre's proximity. Dogs may attack, but in most cases, these animals will flee. Shrubs and scrubs in the area will seem lifeless. A small wilting can be seen. Grayish tin dulling of the leaves. Kelgor. Since his imprisonment, Kelgor has been gripped by an ever-growing hatred. His ire overwhelming so much that it affects his better judgment. He's becoming the rape. Right. Townsfolk, individuals, lots of them. Game master notes, the mill workers, odds and ends. There you have it. Ghosts on the Southern Anduin.